A monarchy is a belief system that God himself, that Allah gave this person the divine right of rulership. That somehow the angel Gabriel came down from heaven and wrote down and helped to write in a book that you, out of everybody, should be responsible for directing the lives and every single aspect of being of these people. We have to challenge that in itself. We have to challenge the fact that democracy and that Islam are incompatible, because they absolutely are compatible. We have to understand that during the restructuring of the Middle East after World War I, one of the first things that the British did was to shut down all the madrasas. What effect did this have? The madrasas were not just schools of Islamic thought, they were schools of Islamic debate as well. They were schools where people debated what went on in the Muslim world, and they debated Islamic history. They debated things that we writ out of Islamic history. In other words, people don't know that the first time that all the Arab armies came together was not in 1948 to fight the new state of Israel that was formed and backed by America. The first time they all came together was during the age of the Caliphate to destroy a people called the Zanj, who lived 13 miles beneath Iraq. They were African people who brought from East Africa to work in salt marshes. And because they were so efficient at defeating every single Arab army that was sent to them, when they were finally tricked into surrendering, because the enemy can only, when they fight a divine force of people, they can only use devilish ways to do it. You can't beat divinity with it. You have to just be a complete devil and lie and cheat and steal your way into it. Instead of executing all of them or selling all of them into slavery, they were incorporated into the Caliphate's army. They were incorporated and sent through the kingdoms of North Africa and eventually flooded into Spain, where they made a permanent residence until, of course, La Reconquista. But I think that we have to acknowledge the fact that if we tap into that historical presence of who we are as a people, if we connect the youth with that, then it becomes something impossible to ignore. If we attack the fact that these people were not given an order by God, they were given an order by their own vanity. Because it's not so much that God creates man in his own image anymore. It's that man has now decided to recreate and create God in his own image, to suit whatever political purpose or whatever economic desire he has. He decides to rewrite the books. It's like a kid who's playing a little imaginary game, and whenever he's not winning the game, he decides to change the rules. Oh no, that doesn't count anymore. We have to do it this way. Oh well, you guys won, but really that's a secret dimensional foul, so that doesn't count right there. And we have to start the whole game over, and I start with 100 points. That's just how they play. We have to learn to get on a square that's not on the chessboard if we expect to win.
So just to let you know that we probably only got time for like 2 more questions before we're going to have to wrap it up and clear the room.
One of you guys had your hands up for a while. Pick one.
Yeah. In Europe, you've got the class system. It's fairly well defined. So if you're from one class, you've got a better chance of being successful. That's been the cause of much revolution throughout the history of Europe. In America, you have the American dream, this idea that anybody can make it if you work hard enough. But it seems like that's almost a veil for a class system which very obviously does exist in America.
Well, I would say there's an American royalty. There's an American economic aristocracy, in other words. People that come from such privileged families and people of such influence that, even though if their kids get 3 or 4 DUIs and they have to go to jail for, 3 weeks, that doesn't put a dent in them. You have to understand, if you go to get charged for something and you're some regular guy off the street, it's probably going to be very different than if you're the son of a congressman or the son of a senator. We might never find out about some of these things. In the same way that, if you're some regular schmuck that goes to college and you're a college athlete, the school's going to treat you very differently if you're the head of a franchise for basketball or soccer or whatever, or if you're just some jerk who's barely squeezing by with, failing grades. They're going to give leniency to a certain amount of people. I think that sort of system already exists inside America, and that it's existed for an incredibly long time. I would say since the conception of America. There's always been that desire to have more than another person and to be more than another person, and it's been based on wealth. And I think that that's tied into racism because only by putting racism forward can the enemy trick Black and Latino people into focusing so much on racism.
You speak a lot about revolution, but do you think a revolution in the Middle East is even possible? Because when you think about it, we were screwed over a long time ago, ever since the Middle East was split up into different countries, and the people themselves are not aware, the people themselves are ignorant. When you look at a country like Jordan, 80% of the people are in poverty, and the 20% that isn't is blinded and ignorant and doesn't know what's happening around them in the world. Like, a small minority actually knows. But the other 20% is blinded by the money and blinded into ignorant nationalism. So basically, how could a revolution even happen when the people themselves aren't aware, the people themselves aren't helping themselves? Even in Palestine, where people are going through so much trouble, lots of our Arabic brothers sold us a long time ago, and most of the aid that so many people have been working for around the world, many students, many organizations, does not get to the people. It goes to the corrupt governments. The governments are way too corrupt. It's past that point. So what could really be done?
Well, I mean, to talk about it, I think that we need to dispel the idea that Jordan is anything more than a monarchy. And a monarchy is the most controlled form of oligarchy, the most concentrated form. I know people resent that, and I know that because I've talked to Jordanians, musicians or artisans, or people from the journalism field that actually come from Jordan. And whenever I say it's a monarchy, they always stop and correct me. They're like, no, it's a constitutional monarchy. And I think that is like me saying, well, no, he didn't rape her, he just date raped her. You know what I mean? It ain't like he beat her over the head with a brick and did some fucked up shit to her, but he cornered her in her dorm room and did some fucked up shit to her. It's the same exact thing. There's no, to me, there are some ways to dress it up, but in the same measure, I think that when we begin to define and understand how these politics work, it leads us to thinking, all right, if these people are making money and they were brokered a deal to put them in power in the first place, then where is the compensation of it all going? And how does it get paid back? In other words, how does the kickback come to them? We know that payola is illegal to give to radio stations now, and yet artists are always willing to do free shows for the radio station because they know that it brings to 2,000 people who pay $25 a head to get in, and they are willing to say, hey, I don't want any of that money, you guys can keep it for your posterity or whatever the fuck, but that helps their records be played all of a sudden. So, in other words, we need to follow that paper trail from where all the money is being invested. And we need to say to ourselves as a people, if we are going to conduct a revolution, that what are the, not what are the weak points of quasi-fascist administration or of a monarchy, but what are the strong points? Because you never defeat an enemy by just attacking his weak points. You can only defeat an enemy by making his strong points his weak points. That's how you defeat someone. That is how you knock them completely off their feet. And what are the strong points of a monarchy? A monarchy is a belief system that God himself, that Allah gave this person the divine right of rulership, that somehow the angel Gabriel came down from heaven and wrote down and helped to write in a book that you, out of everybody, should be responsible for directing the lives and every single aspect of being of these people. We have to challenge that in itself. We have to challenge the fact that democracy and that Islam are incompatible, because they absolutely are compatible. We have to understand that during the restructuring of the Middle East after World War I, one of the first things that the British did was to shut down all the madrasas. What effect did this have? The madrasas were not just schools of Islamic thought, they were schools of Islamic debate as well. They were schools where people debated what went on in the Muslim world, and they debated Islamic history. They debated things that we bring out of Islamic history. In other words, people don't know that the first time that all the Arab armies came together was not in 1948 to fight the new state of Israel that was formed and backed by America. The first time they all came together was during the age of the Caliphate to destroy a people called the Zanj, who lived 13 miles beneath Iraq. They were African people who brought from East Africa to work in salt marshes.